Hello everybody, I'm back again with another figure review video, and I've been so excited to do this video because I've wanted this figure for such a long time. This is the D-Arts Mewtwo figure. This is so awesome. This is the one that goes with the Charizard I have. Wow, I picked them up and the focus just went way off. So I've been really excited to get this guy, and now that I finally have him, I can make a video for you guys, which is going to be really exciting. So before I get too much into the Mewtwo, I'm going to take a look at all the other stuff he comes with, starting with the box, and work our way to Mewtwo. But first of all, two things before I do that. I want to point out that it is an illusion. He can't really stand on his own. He's standing against the background right now. He really needs this stand to stand up. And secondly, this is the re-release of this D-Arts Mewtwo. He came out first before as the first Pokemon D-Arts figure, and in his box he also came with a Mew. It's really the only way to tell that it was different. I think there was something else, maybe it was like a sticker or something on the box that said the Mew was included, but that's basically it. So, I'm going to scoot some things out of the way really quick. Yeah, his accessory down there that you couldn't even see, to show you his box, because these D-Arts boxes are amazing. They really do themselves some justice on these boxes. It's really quite amazing. Gladly, it barely fits on screen. You can see a giant Mewtwo there. This one says Mewtwo here since that's his Japanese name as well. Honestly, when I got this one, I was kind of concerned that I had a fake, and mainly because I got it used from somebody. And the first clues were with this box, but I can show you, I'm pretty sure it is real. One, it's really hard for fakes to get this shiny foil printed into it. Second, this here is actually a sticker, not a print. That's usually a little lengths too far for fakes to go. You get this really awesome print of this foil Mewtwo on the side. Pretty awesome. It's again D-Arts logo. And then onto the back. Now this is what made me feel like mine wasn't quite real. Probably because the back of my Charizard box was really bright and vibrant, and this one seemed very dull and diluted. And I think that's because the color theme they were going with was purple, and when you mix that with purple and black and put it on a matte print, it just doesn't really look quite real. But if anyone else gets that feeling when they open up their Mewtwo, don't ever worry about it. I'm like 95% sure that mine is real, by some weird fluke that these guys just made a really awesome fake. So, a bunch of Japanese text we cannot see, a nearly impossible pose right there, and the awesome Shadow Ball effect. And it's also showing you the stand you'll get, and they're probably saying something interesting about how awesome that little neck thingy Mewtwo has. I'll show you when we get to it. It's pretty sweet. So, another little window here we can peek in to see Mewtwo from the side if we want to, and another foil Mewtwo back there. Top of the box, I really like showing all the size of these boxes just because these boxes are so elaborate, and a bunch of Japanese stuff we can't read. So, that is now background junk. So, I'm going to pull out first that, let's go with the stand first, because the Shadow Ball I kind of want to talk about with Mewtwo. Okay, so, the stand, I'm going to pop this off really quick. That pops right off. It's the same Pokeball stand that the Charizard has. Any of the Pokemon D-Arts so far that I've seen come with these, except now I know that the brand is called Pokemon Figuarts. I believe that's pronounced correctly. The first one they did was Lucario, which is basically the same as these figures, except it's a new series of them. I think they just decided to change the name from D-Arts. So basically, other than those, because I don't own any of those yet, by those they just announced the new one, which is Mega Blaziken, so I don't know yet if they come with these same stands. But basically, it has this grid on the back. Basically, that's just for support. You kind of see it when it's up, just because this is a clear stand, but it's really not that big of a deal. You're going to have this thing in all the time. This is the arm that is going to hold up Mewtwo, because if you haven't noticed, he can't stand. So, comes with this little claw thing as well. Those are on little joints. This piece here is basically a detachable peg. Goes right in there. and not the strongest claw in the world. He does slip out of there a lot, but it will at least hold him up. I would never, ever try and get him to be suspended like they do on the back of that to get him to fly. I've, however, found other ways to get him to look like he's like hovering and flying. I'll show you those later, but for right now, actually, you know, I probably will forget, so I'm just going to show you now. If you move Mewtwo's... I'm just going to jump to this right now. Sorry, I'm jumping to Mewtwo, I'm too impatient. If you move the side of his legs aside like this, you can actually expose the inside of the figure this way. Okay, and it's actually just enough space to get the claws to hold him up like that, and you can actually get him to do some like flying poses and things like that. That's really the only safe way that I found to get that to work. You could basically try a balancing act, but honestly, I wouldn't try it with mine, so I don't know if you should try it with yours. It's just really not worth the damage you do to him. This is actually two pieces of accessories that I'm showing you right here at the same time. You can see that one of them is right here, a detachable hand that is plugged into the shadow ball effect. Before I get into the hand, the shadow ball is just sweet. Only weird thing I have about it is it's not a ball. It's, you see, it's that kind of a disky shape. So that's a little strange. I can see an inverted Mewtwo through it. That's pretty cool. So what's really weird about the shadow ball is one, it's that shape, but two, I mean, it just kind of looks awkward next to him because you don't really want to view him from all angles all of a sudden when you use this thing, because I want to see this from this angle all the time, like how I'm holding it. If you see it like from this angle, it just suddenly doesn't look that great. It looks kind of cruddy, but looks great, looks cruddy, looks great, looks cruddy. See what I mean? So all of a sudden Mewtwo has a very specific angle you want to view him from, and that's a little weird. Now, I'm going to pop this out just to show you guys. There is a little hole in the bottom of the shadow ball. You really can't even see it unless I show you how the hand works here. His detachable hand has a little peg on this one, and basically it is just for grabbing the shadow ball, which is the reason that I have plugged in. Yeah, it's really the only reason, because I mean, I'm never going to have him wear this hand with it out, so it should like always be plugged into this. I'm gonna get into issues I have with his hands anyway later, but just really quickly, let me show you. For some reason, they decided to make this hand have two posable fingers. I really need to have this focus to show you. That middle finger there is not on a joint. For some reason, I don't know why, but it's not on a joint. Maybe it's just to support the shadow ball or what, I don't know. But the other two are on joints. They're very little joints, but they are on joints. If anybody else has this figure, I would actually want someone to confirm to me that that middle one doesn't have a joint, because that's another thing that I saw on my Mewtwo that made me think this is a little fishy. That doesn't quite look right, but mainly because if it didn't have a joint, why does it have that big groove in it? You know, it's like a weird mold. I don't know. But anyway, I've honestly never even posed him with this yet, just because Mewtwo's kind of too awesome and really doesn't need it. I'll stick it together later. Now we can get on to the main event back here. Let me move that out of the way so the focus doesn't get confused. So, Mewtwo, Mewtwo, Mewtwo. And there goes his hand. What an amazing figure. So, the most powerful Pokemon who can just slap a Gyarados away like it's nothing. His mortal enemy is gravity. He cannot stand up. These little legs will never support him. So, basically, when you pose him, you try and deal with that and figure out, what the heck can I actually do to get this guy to stand up? Because you might have a pose in mind that might be replicating some, you know, dynamic attack he could be doing, but the real issue is, how's he going to stand? Is he going to be like floating? Which you really can't do those things like I was showing you before. There's ways to stick it in the back of him so that he can like float like this and do some, you know, ominous, evil, mwahaha pose. Or most of the time you're just wrapping this claw around his waist and standing him like so, which, like I was saying before, he'll slip out of that pretty easy. So you've got to find the right balance of gravity to get him to stand up quite right. And even still, I don't feel safe doing that because he comes right out of it. Really not a strong grip, but gotta deal with it. So first thing I want to point out, normally I don't point this out and I really should about these figures, he's got some crazy paint. I've actually been thinking about taking some of my Pokemon D-Arts and painting them in shiny form, and honestly I was going to make a video about it, asking anyone if they have like some experience in painting figures, specifically their joints, because I'm really worried about ruining them, like they won't be able to pose anymore or I'll just damage the paint and basically ruin this awesome paint job they do, because this is, I'm sorry about the dog, the normal white, which you would expect on Mewtwo, he's actually shaded with different types of purples all over, and it's really cool. They do some similar painting in the tail, but it's really not much. It's really subtle. Most of it you'll see is in his white skin, which is shining that purple color, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so after I've pointed that out, the sculpting is another thing I really don't talk about much, but it's done really well on this Mewtwo. And I'm sorry, I have no idea why my video camera just randomly stopped on me, but it did. So anyway, I was talking about the sculpt of Mewtwo, and particularly I wanted to start by talking about the sculpt for his face, because it's done so well. Because, as another video is put it, talking about this Mewtwo, depending on the angle you view it, you can actually change his expression from looking really calm and serious, or just like contemplative or something, and just by tipping it down or changing the angle you look at it, he just looks ferocious, and that's just sweet. It's just really cool that without like swapping heads or anything, we can actually change the expression of one figure, which is just really great. I should probably do something with that arm over there just because it looks broken while we're looking at him. But anyway, the head sculpt is just fantastic. I want to move down from that to this little rubbery thing that I was going to tell you about before. That thing on the back of his neck, that thing, I don't know what it is. But it's awesome because, as you see here, as we move from this neck joint, that thing is actually, it moves along with the head. I'll show you what it actually is. It's like this rubber thing right here that actually sticks into the back of his head, and don't worry about it falling out because you'll never actually move his head that far to where that thing would run out of room. So it's always going to be in, and it really just conforms to whatever direction you turn him to, which is just awesome because it's really the only way they could get that thing to work, and they did a great job on doing that. The neck, as you can see, I could pretty much move his head in any direction. You're kind of limited by that, obviously, but I mean, it's not like you're going to do something really nuts where he's got to look crazy high in some direction. There's an extra joint here between the shoulders and the neck that gives him just an extra bit of mobility there. Actually, honestly, I don't know if the other joint between his neck and his head really does much of anything. It probably does, but it's kind of hard to get it to move just because the bottom one moves so much more. And you really don't need to move the other one if there is a joint right there, because I can't tell. Honestly, this all sticks together. And I'm kind of distracted by how cool that is and how useful that joint is down there. So I really don't even need a joint there if there is one. It's probably just locking his head in place. So from there, let's just quickly look at his torso. This is on a some sort of a joint here. Actually, I think it goes all the way around. So it's probably some sort of ball joint that is holding his torso together. He can go about that far forward, about that far back, and turn quite a bit without it looking too messed up. The sculpt is just done really well. The arms. Now, this is another thing that made me think that my figure wasn't real, because these joints are just a little weird. I kind of noticed in some of the D-Arts figures that their molds just look a little funny sometimes. And by that I mean you can kind of see the like the lines where it was cast, and I find that a little cheap looking sometimes. Let me see if I can figure out which direction his arm actually wants to go. Okay, so right now it's for some reason going forward and back. Must have twisted something the wrong way. That's probably why it looked so strange. But that's a ball joint in there, or at least it should be. For some reason it's not wanting to go forward. Yeah, something's up in there. But I would have to twist that to get it back to where it was supposed to be. I must have been messing with it too much. This one's going forward decently. He doesn't seem to be able to stretch his hand out straight forward, so you can't really do that, you know, that look where he... Let me see if I can... Oh, shoot. Fine, I'm taking that hand off, Mewtwo. You're driving me crazy with that hand. You know that pose where Mewtwo, like, looks straight at you and holds his hand out? That. You'd probably have to do it like this, where he's turning, because, I don't think you can actually get his arm to go straight ahead without breaking his arm. But really, it's not that big of a deal. The shoulders are a little weird, like I was just saying. They can go kind of limited to what you would expect them to do, but they still work as shoulders. They're still very sturdy and they'll hold. The elbows are weird. I immediately found these to be quite strange. I kind of thought they were fake at first. You see, it's two pieces of plastic, as in the other parts of the arm, connecting at an odd joint that is very obvious. But depending on how you move it, you can hide it and disguise it pretty well. This hand does not come off, or at least it shouldn't. The hand right here has about that much posability, and the fingers, oh my gosh, the fingers, why did they do this? The fingers all have joints. And honestly, they don't need them because it just looks bad. You really can't do that much with his hands anyway. I mean, this could have been solved nicely if they just gave you an extra pair of hands, where one of them was cupped in, one of them was held out. But, see, because now, no matter what I do, I'm going to see those little joints in the fingers, and I really can't get his hand to open up as wide as I would want it to. If I wanted it to be wide, it's about as wide as it'll go. So it's like consistently at a weird point where I always see the joints. That's kind of a bummer. But either way, we're going to go down to his waist area, which is on a joint, but it doesn't really move that much. Most of that movement is up in his torso. So the waist area really doesn't need a joint like that. These legs are done really interesting. The leg can twist forward and back like that. I'll show you what I'm actually doing. But as you see this area here, it can actually like slide down and slide back up. You see that? That is weird. I'd have to take it apart to actually see how that joint is working in there. It's probably some sort of like weird hinged ball joint or something like that, because it can still pivot like this. Can't really see it in there, but obviously the more you mess with it, the weirder he'll look, and he'll look more and more detached from his body, which you don't want. So usually I try and keep those as close as possible up to his waist. Obviously just like that, I can spread his legs wider apart, which he can do some more dynamic, like psychic fighting poses, which look pretty cool. There's a ball joint right here at his, I'm gonna say that's his ankle, because it's not quite his knee. I don't think he really has a knee. This little toe thing is just kind of flat, kind of hard to see. That is a toe. At first I wasn't sure what that was. Kind of thought it was like a piece for the joint, but no, that's his toe. I just kind of missed it before. And then he has a bit of posability in this little toe piece here, but not much. It's just enough to really balance him out better when he's standing. And oh my gosh, now it's time to talk about this tail. Oh my goodness. So, you know how I always say there's that one part on a figure that for some reason, no matter what you do, you're going to have one part that just kind of doesn't come out right? Well, for mine, it is this one joint you see right there screwing up the tail. That one. This one, for some reason, just goes farther than the others and will make his tail look like it's kind of broken, depending on what angle you look at it. I can compensate back for it and fix it, but really that's just my tail. So this thing has, I'm not even going to count them, a ton of points of articulation in it, and oh my gosh, it is so cool. So the tail is really the main posable reason that we're messing with this Mewtwo. You could do so many things with this tail, and depending on what you do, I mean, you totally change like what the main pose can do. It's the fact that this tail is so posable and can go down like this is why people really want to pose him in the air. which is where we're going to run into some of those problems when you actually do want to pose him. Some people have used this tail to help him stand up. Either laying it flat like that could help him stand. I'll give him his hand back. Sorry. Now that I'm not messing with it. You can either... Oh, I see what the issue was. Yeah, his elbow was just facing the wrong way. Okay, so you can either use his tail like that to help him stand up, try and lower it a bit more, and then make the tail go back up. So he's still, you see what I actually did, not really standing like this, but the tail is still kind of up in the air. It's not that great. Honestly, everything I found just doesn't really make it look that great unless you just give up and, yeah, that's kind of like a chicken squat. Give up and just end up using that clear stand anyway, just to latch onto him so he can stand, which adds a lot of bulkiness to him and kind of takes away from it, which is kind of a bummer, but it's still really cool that you can even pose him like this. Now, you can really get away with some really cool poses with him if you can get him suspended in the air with this tail, because that really gets to show off how fluid it is. And it is so much more fluid than the tail for Charizard. If you watch my video for the Charizard, I kind of pick on his tail a bit just because it's a little stiffer and clunkier. Right when I felt this, I was like, there goes that hand again. I was like, there's no way this Mewtwo's fake. That is done so much better than my Charizard. Even though I know for a fact my Charizard was real. This has to be. This is just done too well. If there's any issue with it at all, it's that it's kind of tough to do two curves with it. It's pretty easy to line up all the joints to do a really fluid single curve, but when you look at it from other angles, you can start to notice, like, hey, that one was not quite right. If you want him to do two curves, now all of a sudden this gets kind of tough, and you turn it some more and you start seeing some joints that just don't quite look right, and it gets a little tougher. But if you can pull it off, it looks really great. So definitely the coolest part about the Mewtwo, pose-wise, is that tail. So I'm just not even going to touch his hand so that we can actually keep it on here for the rest of the video, which honestly isn't going to be very long because we're basically done. I am just continuously talking because this Mewtwo is amazing. So yeah, it would have been pretty nice if I did get the Mew with this. I just know that getting the Mew with this Mewtwo now requires you to get the original one, and by getting one of those in the box, it's going to cost quite a lot of money. And, excuse me, honestly, at that rate, just go buy a little Mew figure, a little Tomy. It's basically the size that it was. Honestly, it was I think it was a little smaller than this Shadow Ball, honestly. If you count just like this size, it was really tiny compared to this Mewtwo. So I would just go with like one of the little Tomy ones and put him on a stand next to him or something. I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. The figure, though, I got him pretty cheap. Like I said, I got him used. But if you're going to buy a new one right now, he's probably like around 70 bucks. He's going up a lot. Like I know the Charizard I just reviewed, he's going up a ton too. He's like 200 bucks now, which is kind of a bummer. But anyway, this Mewtwo is still really good deal, I think. So I would definitely grab him if you get the chance, if he's not too much for you. And really great figure. So now that he's cooperating and actually standing against the wall, I'm going to take some final pictures and see you guys at the final reviews. Alright, so time for some final thoughts on Mewtwo. There's a couple things right away I want to say that I, like, with wishful thinking, feel like this Mewtwo should have had. Like, instead of posable fingers, he should have had interchangeable hands. Like, one of them's closed, one of them's open, because with the posable fingers, you really just can't quite get either of those looking right, and you always have joints showing, which is kind of a downside to him. Another bummer thing about him is that he can't really stand up. But the thing is, just look at how his anatomy works. You can't really do anything about that. So you're just going to have to deal with the stand. At least the stand looks very nice for him and is useful. It's just that claw that goes around his waist isn't very useful, and it's kind of hard to get him to stand up nicely in the way you want. You really do have to fight with gravity. I say I think I do like the Shadow Ball effect. It does look pretty cool. I'm glad at least some parts of it are transparent. It's got some pretty cool paint on it. It does look like a Shadow Ball from certain angles, like I was saying, but as long as you get it to view from one angle in particular, it looks really cool. So I would say the Mewtwo was done really well. I think as they started making more of these D-Arts figures, each one kind of had their own quirks, but they were still really good. So I would say the Mewtwo is a really cool Pokemon figure that they've made. I don't know much about the new ones they're doing with the Figuarts line, which are Lucario and Mega Blaziken currently. Those are the only two that we know about right now. And I don't know exactly if like they've changed their joints or anything, because this Mewtwo has some really odd joints, especially in his shoulders. They just feel really stiff and can't quite move in some directions. And the new ones look really clean. Maybe it's just the photography, but I don't know. So anyway, I would say this Mewtwo is pretty cool. You can do a lot of different poses with him. Some are kind of limited based on where his joints are, but it's still a really cool find, a really cool buy if you can get him for a decent price. I would still give him like a 7 or 8 out of 10, probably the 7, just because he's got so many quirks to him that make him difficult to pose. But once he's actually up, he looks really awesome. So that's gonna be my final verdict on this Mewtwo. If you can get a hold of one of them, you should let me know. See what you think of yours, because I'd really like to know if somebody guarantee that mine is real, because I'm like 90% sure it is, but there's just that thing in the back of my mind saying that figure should have been posable on the Shadow Ball hand, but it shouldn't really. I don't know. So I'll see you guys in the next figure review video.